Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. BST, every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and the NFT meme coin market. If that is really what they are, DeGods putting on a bit of a masterclass and turning the NFTs into some type of more liquid token, or at least in people's minds. We're going to get into all of that and more in just a little bit. On today's show, we'll be talking about Bitcoin and Sol consolidating, ETH underperforming. We'll also talk about the raising VC landscape with a new fund attempting to raise $75 million. We're going to put that into context with how funds have been raising in recent history. And then also we're going to talk about DeGods ripping up almost 100% to a 1.55 ETH floor. Interesting mechanics going on there for why that might be the case now. So we're going to talk about all of that in just a little bit. But just a reminder that nothing that we say here is financial advice. This market is so risky, which means that we don't know anything for sure. So please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, I am joined by my legendary co-host, Sammy. How are you doing? How are you feeling on this Thursday, the 8th of August?
I'm good. It seems to be things are healing. There's a lot more green on the market today, so that's a good sign. It's market sentiment seems to be shifting,
And it seems like there were no riots in our city yesterday.
I haven't actually checked. I mean, I just locked in. I literally just locked in and just avoided
Sammy's so
anything.
locked in, it doesn't matter if there's like been a bloodbath outside. Just like the candles are green. No, to be honest, I know what you mean though, because if you're not, if you are in an area that's not affected, then it kind of, it's not necessarily going to be on your radar. But it turns out that things seem to pass pretty peacefully yesterday, and the expected riots or protests in London didn't really materialize in the way people thought they would. So that is a positive thing. You're maybe feeling more positive because of the markets. What's your general thinking at the moment there, Sam?
We had a brief chat before the show, and I
Yeah.
think we'll touch on the VC funding and stuff later. But I don't know. Are we coming into that phase where it's like late 2020, early 2021? Like VC funding seems to be coming back in. People are trying to front run each other for those investments. And then obviously you have the blow off tops around like mid 2021, and then the NFT stuff like slightly later than that. But yeah,
I'm looking forward to that conversation a lot, because especially in the context of what Kobe said the other day, which is like, we haven't even had a cycle yet. It hasn't even started. And I'm interested to know whether all of that liquid, eager capital that was almost too eager at the start of the year to get into all of these rounds and become an angel investor and feel good about themselves and pat themselves on the back, whether that's, you know how when leverage gets wiped out of the market, it's like that easy capital, that really opportunistic capital, been wiped out, and now there may very well be proper opportunities again back available to the astute investor, because deal flow has either dried up or people know they can't raise just for anything at the moment. So interested to get into that conversation in just a little bit, because yeah, something there to discuss for sure. But let's get into the snapshot to bring you the price action and the headlines from the market, everything that you need to know from the last 24 hours to get you up to speed. I'll share it on screen. Remember, we're live on X video and live on YouTube as well, if you want to tune in there. Let's starting with some price action. We've got Bitcoin pretty much flat at just over 57K. ETH down 3% to 2.4. Solana up 1% to 154. I saw some charts the other day saying the Sol ETH chart just keeps looking up. I don't know how much longer our patience will last with ETH, Sam, but maybe that's something we'll talk about in a bit. Number 2, crypto veteran Meltem Demirors raising $75 million. I hope I pronounced the name right, for 2 venture funds under Crucible Capital. They said that the median size of deals have climbed from 3 million in the first quarter to 3.2 million. Venture funds have also seen massive raises, including Paradigm announcing a new $850 million fund in June. So that's happened in the last couple months. We're going to track that and discuss that in a lot more detail to see what the opportunity is on the venture side in just a little bit. And finally, DeGods rip up 100% to a 1.55 ETH floor as Frank pushes new Telegram chat called DeGods HQ and starts burning DeGods as their market cap increases. Interesting strategy there from founder Frank. Going to discuss it and dissect it in a little bit. Crazy price action, unseen price action, frankly, from the NFT side of things. We've not seen that in a long while. So we'll get into some of the strategy being employed.
That was a cracking pun, frankly.
Oh, did I say that? Completely unintended, although I wish I'd pretended that I least did intend to do that. Before we get into those bigger conversations, though, Sam, and I want to have a bigger conversation as well around like Moon moving to Solana today. But before we get there, what's catching your attention on the market as we head over to our NFT marketplace partner, Mintify?
So there's three things that are kind of spiked. I think the DeGod stuff, we'll leave that because that's pretty clear why that's happening. But that's up sort of 35%. And there's two others. So Fluff World. Now, for those of you that were around in 2021, this was a project that launched, I think they had their 3-year birthday yesterday.
Wow.
And they announced, I think it's Threadyverse, which is, they've got like some involvement with Cool Cats and a few other projects. And it looks like a single wallet swept, I don't know how many, but they swept it up to 2x its floor price. Now, whether that's part of the giveaway that they're doing as part of their 3-year anniversary, but they seem to be building some stuff out. If you go to their, I'll just drop their homepage in there, but they've got a video of what they're building, which looks relatively interesting. But that's the key reason.
What a wonderful liquidity event for people. Whoever, say you're a holder waiting for ages and ages and ages just to go up like 140% in the day, swept by one particular holder.
Yeah, and then there's the so the third one is Mochaverse. Now they've got a so Tyler Durden, or AKA kind of, he's speaking at Taipei Ton blockchain conference. So
Okay.
something's happening there, I think. Now, I think Mochaverse, they tend to make these announcements, or tend to make announcements at these events in first person. So it'd be interesting to see what comes out of that. But that seems to be up a reasonable amount.
That's interesting. I mean, it's interesting that NFTs seem to be experiencing some aggressive action. Like, again, like we were talking just a couple of weeks ago, how Doodles, despite all of their amazing announcements, I think they did see some price appreciation, but they didn't necessarily see the type of reaction that we're seeing here. 10, 15, 20%, in DeGods' case, 100%, but I think that's a bigger reason, so which we'll discuss. A little bit more aggressive action here. Do you think NFTs are just kind of underbought in that respect? Like
Well, I think they were oversold for a period of time, but also two out of three have been doing some partnerships with Telegram, or the Tom network. So that to me is quite interesting. So whether there's some new holders that are coming in, or whether it's just existing holders seeing that as bullish news. But Mochaverse specifically, I think they're the biggest Ton validator. And then I guess DeGods doing that Telegram announcement, and I mean it seems quite small, but I think the burn probably helps as well with buyback. But they're both Telegram related. So whether there's new people that are familiar with Telegram that are coming into NFTs, I'm not sure. It's hard to say.
Okay. I think that's fair. As you said, we're gonna the biggest NFT mover in the last 24 hours was DeGods, so we're gonna talk about them a little bit more in just a little bit. I wanted to touch on first the interesting conversation for me today was actually Moon moving off Blast and kind of migrating to Solana. I've got two quotes here from the founder, which I think are interesting, which I'm going to use to set up the conversation. And then Sam, really curious to hear your thoughts on this. Pac-Man, obviously the founder of Blast, which was a highly, highly anticipated L2, which seems to be losing some of the traction, losing some of the attention that it had for quite some time. He said there's been a desire to allocate incentives to native assets since phase one, but at the time, a chain allocating incentives directly to third-party teams had never been done before. We decided to exercise caution and only allocate incentives to apps. So they're going to try and expand in different ways. I think they recognize that there's some work that they need to do in order to fix the current incentive issue. But he made this specific note about Pacmoon. He said it's unfortunate that Pacmoon decided to migrate before this distribution came out. At the end of the day, every project needs to make the decisions that feel right for them, and I'll always respect that. Wishing Pacmoon the best. In the meantime, the allocation that was reserved for Pacmoon will be distributed to previous holders based on a combined snapshot of 2 weeks pre-TGE and 2 weeks post-TGE. So one, that's a little note to anyone who is holding Pacmoon in the audience. If you held it 2 weeks prior to TGE, you're going to get some type of, I think it's gold allocation now, which will be good. But the second note is interesting. I read the comments here, Sam. Everyone was kind of suggesting this is the first time you've spoken about Pacmoon, and it's to tell them goodbye. Dan said first time in 6 months that Pac-Man says the word Pacmoon, and it's to say goodbye. Why this update did not come before Pacmoon started migrating to Solana. I think the sentiment is that they just didn't really feel the support that they would have liked. What's your thought on the whole Pacmoon situation moving to Solana? Is that ultimately just the place to go at the moment? And could Blast really have done anything else to keep them?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of points. I mean, Pacmoon were the main recipient of the Blast jackpot, which, for those that don't know, that was kind of like a random chance of receiving a jackpot of, I think it was $1 million gold to start with, a fraction of that. But I think subsequent to that, I don't think there's been no jackpot hit for about, I don't know, several months now. So I think, I mean, I understand why Bobby and Lambo were feeling kind of underwhelmed by the support from Blast. But I do think that this recent distribution, I don't think it was a gut reaction. I think there was some thought that had gone into it. Because if you look at some of these other collections, like Stats' photography collection got an allocation of gold. You got Wolves, which is like so Adam, who produces these daily write-ups on the Blast ecosystem, his NFT collection got an allocation of gold. So they've definitely looked at giving some to the cultural side and try and grow that side of the ecosystem. And I suspect Jen's probably had some influence there because she's deep in understanding who's actually kind of connected to the ecosystem and how they can kind of support those. But I understand why they've made that move. And I think we've spoken about like fragmented liquidity on these L2s, and you've spoken about like the valuations that they come out on Blast seem to be relatively low compared to these other alt layer ones or whatnot. So I think the move to Solana, there's just a lot more liquidity flowing around, especially from the meme coin side of things. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I wonder if it is a little bit too late to that particular cycle, and maybe they have to wait to the next like inflow, because we've spoken about that downward trajectory of price and pump on those meme coins each time. So it'd be interesting to see how and where Pacmoon fits into that kind of allocation of soul meme coins. But yeah, I've got an allocation of Pac. I'll probably burn it to go to the army token on Solana. But yeah, keen to see what they roll out. So I think I don't think it's just going to be a meme coin. I think there'll be some ingenious ways of kind of marketing or like getting people to get involved in that particular token.
Yeah, interesting. I guess we'll see what they try to do. Just a further point on like the thinking behind this. The reason why I'm so interested in this and why I think it's important for everyone to be interested in this is it's kind of like when countries or even cities or states are competing for talent, and there seems to be like a mass migration in one particular direction, whether that's from already existing places versus younger people who are just coming up. So it feels like at the moment Solana's winning on two fronts. One, the younger people who are coming up, say the equivalent of young people who are trying to go to universities, like they want to go to Solana, they want to go and build whatever they're building in that particular place. So that's on the young people side. But even for the people who are out there building already, who might be somewhere else, it's like when people talk about the brain drain, it might not literally be a brain drain, but like a talent drain from one particular business area to another particular business area because they don't feel like they're getting the support or the right incentives being put in place in order for them to thrive where they are. And this was the justification given by Bobby. You mentioned Bobby, who's one of the founders at Pacmoon. He said, "We are migrating to Solana. Over the past 2 months, we've been thinking through options: ETH, Solana, and Base. Every chain has its pros and cons. It's clear to us that Solana will continue being the number one place for meme coins this cycle. New retail traders are onboarding to Solana and crypto natives are rotating into it. Sol's strength provides a massive boost to every coin on its chain. The objection to Solana is that the meme coin space is saturated and people are short-term oriented. While this is true for the most part, strong communities are still emerging. We believe that we'll be the next one because we've already built an amazing community of holders and creators. Solana is an attention game, and we've consistently proven that we know how to go viral. So capturing attention will be even easier on Solana because the ecosystem is so much larger and we'll have access to the best partnerships." Interesting thoughts there, Sam. Do you agree with this thinking? Do you disagree? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I like that Bobby, he makes an accurate reflection of the fact that it's quite saturated on Solana. Like you've got pump.fun, like how are
Yeah,
you
because
going to
it's not as
position yourself?
straightforward as like, look, we know how to get attention. But if you're going into the market where all the attention is already competing with each other, on Blast, they were in quite a unique position, right? Because they just had all of the attention almost exclusively on them. Not entirely, but as a coin, almost exclusively.
Yeah, and I think like the reason why people stuck around with them was because they built out that social validator thing, and unfortunately, because X changed the likes, the way that was visible, that kind of screwed that a little bit. So it'd be interesting to see what kind of innovation they build out on Solana, because it strikes me as they just won't stick to just a typical meme coin, just price up and down and just attention. I think they'll do something innovative because they've got a decent track record of that. But I like the fact that they've acknowledged that it's saturated. So they're going to have to find their niche, and yeah, I'll get some exposure because I like what they're doing, and I think there'll probably be a lot of other people on Blast that will do the same thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. And what do you think then more broadly? Like it's clearly a the what did you think about like the fact he mentioned meme coins as the place or the thing which Solana is known for most? This idea at one point was that Pack was more like a community coin. And one of the criticisms of maybe even some coins on Base, for example, is that they're not really meme coins. They're kind of manufactured in some way. And so do you have any updated thoughts on like these manufactured community coins versus the pure memes?
Well, I think that ultimately they're roughly the same thing, just tokenized attention. So how do you capture that attention? I think you need to do something with it that's new and different, and I think that's how they'll capture that. Whether it's a community coin or a meme coin, like meme, ultimately it has like a funny element to it. A community coin, it probably has a little bit more thought to it. Like you're trying to rally some sort of feeling of like inclusiveness with the people that are kind of built into that. And I think the likes of pump.fun, they're doing that with the channels, the way you can have that communication even after it hits Radium. They've got the video stuff. So they're trying to create that sense of community. And I think PacMoon acknowledged that already. So there are meme coins that get launched, but I think they're kind of one step kind of further down that line of evolution. So I think they could do something relatively good. I just don't know what that is yet. I don't think the validator stuff necessarily worked because it relied on that like system. So I think it will be different, but keen to get involved and try out whatever they come to market with.
Yeah. Reasonable points by Overarch in the YouTube comments. They say all these coins are going to zero eventually, but also community coins, no different to memes, probably weaker and less cultish. This is that kind of conversation in terms of price action where it's felt like for a while the consensus has been you got to bet on the cult more, and this manufactured idea like maybe can't work as much. Having said that, I don't know any. Well, maybe there were a couple other meme coins, but to get people to do an everyday of Pack like 3 times or something outrageous was pretty damn impressive. So
But
I thought
also,
that
I
was
think I think like if you're going to look at the end game, right? Like a meme coin, once that meme kind of becomes irrelevant, that coin's value is probably going to go down. We saw it with like tokenized like political coins, all that kind of stuff as well. But I think the end game with PacMoon, if they were to create some sort of like tech that they were able to generate real revenues for, and those revenues were able to go back to pack holders, then that's something that's really innovative. And I think that may be something that they were trying to do with the validators, where those that became validators that owned a certain amount, they earned a certain amount of pack in the next airdrop. So it'd be interesting to see if they go down that route. In which case, if you've got real revenues and real cash flows coming in that effectively got like a fee switch, that could be super interesting.
Interesting stuff. Final thing on the kind of meme coin conversation, since we have inevitably pivoted into that. I was listening to KBM, Keyboard Monkey, for the people who don't know, great trader and thinker about these kind of value plays, or just trading in general. It was on Rec Radio the other day, and he had like a very, very negative outlook on memes. And I know many people want their memes to go up so bad, and I hope that they do too, for all the people involved in them. But I guess it's Overarch's point, who in the YouTube comments is saying like, eventually this stuff is going to go down. Maybe if Solana, rips up 3x, this stuff can go up 10x, maybe. But I heard him say at one point, which is an interesting point, just like, what? So you think everyone holding memes is just gonna like go around flying private jets and become rich? Like, I think his perspective from listening in, just like how, like, just these things never work out that way. And it just won't work out that way, that everyone holding memes is just gonna end up being super rich and flying private jets everywhere. I do think that there's still opportunity. I do think there's still the liquidity bubble. But I wanted to share this particular tweet that he put out, which I think he wrote during the show. He said the following. He kind of just put out his long-term targets for a bunch of really popular coins, and I'm sure it would have triggered a lot of people. I don't know how many people it would trigger in this show as well. Mog, long-term target 30 million, current market cap 320. Down, so it's like down 90% prediction. Apu, 85 million current market cap, long-term prediction 2 million. Popcat, current market cap 339, long-term target 40. Sorry, by the way, I don't think these current market caps are accurate because they were written by someone else at some point in time. So KBM was just copy and pasting that and then putting his long-term targets into it. Harry Potter, Obama, Sonic, Inu, current market cap 80, long-term target 8. In essence, the prediction was, just Stefano on YouTube. That's correct. So it was initially done, this list, by Murad, and KBM was kind of just inserting his long-term targets on top of it. Basically, hyper bearish on all meme coins. Sam, do you want to close this topic off with your thoughts on this kind of humorous reaction? But I'm sure people didn't necessarily. I'm going to just have a look at the comments now to see if people got exceptionally triggered by it.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the list of meme coins there, they're not exactly the A tier ones, like the WIFs, the Pepe, the Doge, Sheep, all that kind of stuff. So I think he's right in thinking that they're probably going to go down over time, unless they get some serious like following or backing. But yeah, I don't know. Like, you look at was it Cirrus who posted that chart that had like the different cycles, and then you had the top tier ones that kind of had that blow off top. But I think ultimately, if you have that flow of attention that kind of goes through each of those cycles, the pool of capital available gets thinner. You can't not everyone will go through the moon. Like, it's not going to be multiple billions. You're going to have some that are going to be around that small to mid cap range that probably be there for a long period of time. People might try and trade it, but ultimately, I actually tend to I tend to agree with him, to be honest, and that's probably a divisive take. But yeah,
this is the point I've been making the last few days, right? You look at the chart, and basically they keep trying. All these coins, when they pump, they keep trying to make a high. They can't do it, and then every time they dip lower than they did the previous time. So
yeah, and I think, like, if you look at Mog, like, Mog has a decent following, but whenever I see people posting about it, it just feels forced. I don't know if you have the same sentiment, but like, I don't know, like, K Money is a big advocate of it. You have a lot of these like big influencers that probably have big bags in it, and I don't know necessarily how natural that is. Whereas WIF is like, oh, it's funny, it's a dog with a hat. Like, Mog, the glasses are cool, like the Vapors, like the Vipers, Pit Vipers are decent, but I don't know, like, will it have that universal appeal that breaks out of that kind of like small niche? I don't know.
Yeah, I think Stefano's take is fair as well, where it's like, look, when retail comes in, they'll probably buy memes, not tech coins or ETH. I think that's probably reasonable. But this is the key point that, again, we're just kind of setting you up with some perspective from probably one of the best traders on the timeline. When someone responded to them and said, bro, but prices only to be seen in the next bear market, technically still a long-term target, missing the mania that precedes it. So this person's position was, yeah, fine, they're going to go to zero at some point, but you're going to miss out on the mania, which is obviously when we're talking about the liquidity bubble that has gone to meme coins. That's what we want to try and participate in, right? Like if there's going to be one, you might as well try to participate in it. And KBM's response was, the mania already occurred. Like, and you got to zoom out just for a second and look. I appreciate if Solana completely rips, these memes could rip too. But if you don't think that there has been any mania in meme coins already up to this point in the cycle, like that's just not accurate. It's 100% true that there has been significant mania, frankly, across the board with like various coins running at different points in time. I'm not necessarily saying it's as much as another time or as little as another time, but there has been a mania already. And frankly, it's still going on sometimes, every now and again. So definitely something to keep in mind as just part of your kind of trading strategy and to keep tabs on. Right. That was an interesting conversation on meme coins. We are increasingly just taking a look at them, checking in on them, because that is where the mania is at the moment. But we also want to get into this VC raising news today, because I think it's actually a good indicator of mania as well, frankly. But let's bring you the news first, and we'll kind of put it into some context. This is coming from Fortune, where Meltem Demirors, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, has become a prominent voice in the blockchain industry. What they are trying to do is raise two separate funds with an intended size of 30 million and 45 million. The crypto sector has been on a rollercoaster this year. The median size of deals, I thought this was maybe the interesting information to pull out of this article. This year, the median size of deals climbed from $3 million in the first quarter to $3.2 million in the second quarter. Venture funds have also seen massive raises, including Paradigm announcing a new $850 million fund in June. While Demiror's Crucible, the Crucible is the name of the fund, is aiming for a more modest $75 million, the filings indicate continued appetite among investors in the digital asset sector, especially as its political fortunes appear to improve in the US. I'm just going to put this in a bit of context, Sam, then want to come for your thoughts straight away. Woo Blockchain put out this tweet, a monthly report for July, where there were 111 publicly disclosed crypto VC investment projects in July, an increase of 12% month on month. The total fundraising amount in July was 1.02 billion, an increase of 37% month on month. And some of the larger, there's a list of some of the larger projects. So it does seem to be trending up still, according to this data. And then maybe a final thing to put it into context, Bread, who we've spoken about this before on the show. He said, the top isn't close until we're seeing sustained, absurd funding rounds. I want to see a boutique fund raise 700 million to invest in cat-only virtual machines. So you can see on this chart, which I'm showing on screen for people watching, we're live on YouTube video and X, and X. But if you can't see, the 2024 numbers at the moment are so far lower than the 2021 and 2022 numbers. So from that respect, maybe we're not as far in the cycle as we might think. Sam, just going to come to you for some general thoughts first on news of another fund and where you think we are when it comes to raising for these types of projects.
Yeah, I think that, just going back to that chart, I think that's super interesting, because if you look at the size of the funding in 2018 compared to 2020 to 2021, it's a fraction of the size. So just
That's true.
And then I wonder if this time around, because you've got that institutional interest, it might actually go significantly higher than 2020, 2021. And you got to remember that was it Yuga Labs raised, I think it was like 450 million. They had like the other side mint, which was insane. They had so Sorare raised a significant amount of money, which is actually doing pretty well in terms of gaming. It's got a lot of traction. You got Forte, which was, I don't even know what they did, but I think they raised about 750 million. So there's all these like gaming funds, or like, I suppose they are metaverse or gaming plays that raise significant amounts of capital on that narrative in 2020, 2021. So it'd be interesting to see when that starts to come back in this time around, because I don't think we've seen it yet. And based on those charts, like, it feels like there's been sufficient time between, if you compare the distance between 2018 and 2020 or 2021, it's roughly about the same distance between like the 2021, the end of that tail curve, or 2022 to now. So it'd be interesting to see when that starts coming back through. And I think we started discussing that, like, maybe you'll start to get VCs and angels start to try to front run each other to get ahead of that, to get those deals in earlier, and maybe lock in those favorable terms. Because I think we saw a snippet of it in December and January where the terms were pretty decent to start with for KOLs, especially. But by sort of April, March, like, they were quite predatory. Like, you would literally get screwed over as a KOL because you like the lockup, there'd be barely any TGE unlock. So yeah, I think like we saw a glimpse of what it's like in December, January, but I think there's a lot more to come. And I think over the next 6 months, they could see a lot more funding coming through, particularly if you have the big Web2 players coming into the space.
Yes. Okay. I think there's a bunch of reasonable points there. My question, or my thinking, kind of my update, is this. We obviously got involved in December, January, did some great deals, did some more challenging deals, definitely participated in what felt like a great opportunity, and then it kind of quickly shifted into all kinds of things coming across your desk, and they didn't seem very good, mostly because they were just too expensive. So definitely in the last month or so, the deal flows kind of slowed down a bit, which I think is probably good. It's probably good that it's slowed down. The only question that I have, which I don't have an answer to at the moment, is have the numbers reset a bit? Because on reflection, when I'm looking back, it's not necessarily bad that a lot of people are trying to come to the market. The thing that made certain deals so bad for a period of time was that the number just got so much higher so quickly. And when we say the number of people who haven't done this stuff before, obviously they're raising at a particular FDV in mind. And what I've learned now after this first kind of mini cycle of investing is that there's a really big deal. This is what you'll do in your head, or this is what I did in my head, and I think this will be interesting for people. Say someone tells you that they're raising at a $20 million FDV. Then you think, okay, well, that's not the circulating supply, right? Say only 10% circulating supply, that's a 2 million market cap. It's like, well, okay, that's nothing. So we're good. Like, if you want to be like super straightforward about it, that might be one of the ways you think about it. And then say someone says, okay, well, we're raising at 30 million. You know, well, okay, well, that's the FDV. FDV is kind of a meme, right? That's only a $3 million market cap. Well, and that's hardly any difference between 20, because there's only 1 million when it comes to the market cap. And then someone says, well, we're raising at 40. And that's $20 million difference in terms of an FDV, but it's only 2 million when it comes to market cap if the circulating supply is only 10%. So in your head, you can actually convince yourself that there's no difference. There's no difference between 20 million and 40 million. Who cares? FDV is a meme. The market caps are so close. Even if there's 100% difference, it's only 2 million. And I think what I've learned in this first round is that there's a big difference between even 35 million and 45 million, or 25 million and 38 million, or something like that. And say a group of people get in around before you at 35, and then the next one is at 45. Like, it's a bigger difference than you think when it comes in practice. What are your reflections been, Sam?
Yeah, 100%. Like, if you get into an earlier round, then the multiples that you can hit from that investment can be significantly higher. And I've had investments where I've been thrown into the Telegram chat for the investor channel, and all of a sudden you've got the earlier round that are already in there. They're like, hey, the exit liquidity's arrived, and you're buying at
Oh, really?
higher valuation. And then you're like, shit, what have I invested in? But yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's a bit of a joke between the investors, because if they get in earlier, then they see it, it's like, okay, it's bullish, they've raised at a higher round as well, so their valuation's actually higher than what they got in at. But yeah, like I agree. Like, I think when you're hitting like Portal, what was that, like, was it a 50x or something for the early angels?
40x initially.
40x, yeah. Like, it probably doesn't make too much difference if you get in at like a
No.
20% difference from those
Sure.
initial investments. But if you're only making, I mean, I'm saying only making, but like a 2x or a 3x from the angel round, and then like there's a strategic round at a later stage that's just a higher valuation, then that can significantly cut into what the multiples or return that you get on your investment if you're in at that later round. So, but then also I think you need to also consider the lockup terms, the TGE, like the unlock there and all that kind of stuff, because you could get in at an earlier round, but there might not be any vesting for, like, the vesting might start sort of 12 months down the line, by which point, like, there's nothing that's happened. So it just depends when you get that liquidity event as well.
Do you know what? Okay, so this is I'm kind of talking myself into doing some more of this, to be honest, because, well, on one specific condition, and there's one big elephant in the room, which we'll discuss now, and then we'll get into the rest of the headlines. I think that people got wiped. If you considered like all of those KOLs coming into all of these deals, all of that leverage, it's not really leverage, but consider it something like leverage. People have got wiped, and the kind of game has been reset a little bit. The table's been reset. I suspect valuations have probably had to be reset a little bit. I think it is net bullish for funding or like raising, that a lot of people have got wiped and we can kind of start again. However, the overarching concern, which still persists, whether or not there's like excessive numbers of KOLs throwing money at useless things, the overarching concern is still just the low FTV, high FTV, the low float, high FTV coin, which seems to only go down once they launch. So this is the challenge for me. And one of the interesting things I've started to feel, there was a period of time at the start of the year where I was like, it doesn't matter whether you give me equity at all. Like, we're just trying to get the token. The token is the token is the investment, right? Like, I'm crypto native. I am interested in tokens. That's why I'm participating in this. And then I actually started to shift more recently, where I was like, do you know what? There's certain companies where I actually am kind of more interested in the equity or the potential of equity. So one of the ones that I invested in was Orange Cap Games, which is Spencer's kind of venture in the Pudgy, like, they're creating that TCG game. It's not with Pudgy Penguins, but it's kind of like for Pudgy Penguins, using that IP, leveraging that IP. I was like, do you know what? Having a slice of that is actually like trying to invest in things where I'd actually want a slice of the company rather than just going for hyper speculative token things. I think made the process a bit more sensible to me. I don't know if you have a reflection on that, Sam, before we move on.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at the fundamentals then, because as an equity holder, at some point you'd hope that you're entitled to dividends, so real revenues from the company, that kind of they'll derive profits, go into retained earnings, and then depending on the dividend policy of that particular business, shareholders would receive a right to those proceeds of the distributable earnings. So I think it just depends on the company and the underlying business. Like, you've got Rect Brands recently doing an equity to NFT holders. Like, they've got real sales coming in from the sale of their Rect drinks and Rect Brands probably down the line. So that's super interesting to me. You've got DeGods Distillery, which is like an alcohol beverage company that's got licensing agreements on chain, and they're doing festivals where they'll be able to sell like the alcohol that they're making at these festivals and get revenue from that. So equity holders of that would get some sort of revenue at some point, or a distribution of those earnings. Like you mentioned, the Spencer Ventures stuff, like they're selling, is it cards? Pudgy cards? Yeah. So ultimately, like, anything that has real revenues, like the equity is interesting to me. But I don't think that that would necessarily be the case for everything. If someone gives you equity, but they don't have a business model where they're going to get real revenues, where they're going to have like a consumer that is willing to pay for the services or product, then I don't think the equity's worth anything. In which case, if they do a token raise, yes, it's speculative, but you might get some sort of liquidity back from your investment from that. But I just think it needs to be a bit more mindful about, like, don't invest in equity specifically just because you want to be an owner of the business. If there is no revenues and there's no distributable earnings, and that people don't want to buy that stock at a later stage, then that equity is worthless. So you just need to be careful.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair assessment. But look, definitely just wanted to bring that to people's attention, because yes, these reasonable sized funds continue to be raised. I definitely think there's a lot of capital ready to be deployed into the market, and it feels like the heat in this particular side of the market has kind of just slowed down just a touch. It's kind of had a little bit of a reset. So I think that is helpful. And we'll monitor that as we continue. But let's get on to the final headline just a little bit. But let's hit the Web3 roundup from the snapshot to get you up to speed with everything else that you need to know from the past 24 hours. Number one, Binance lists Telegram's Ton coin. Binance will list Ton today, which should have done just a couple of hours ago. So that's bullish for them. Price went up on that news. Next, Arbitrum Orbit chains offer USDC as a custom gas token. That's pretty interesting to know. USDC getting integrated everywhere. XRP ordered to pay $125 million in fines when the SEC had actually asked for $2 billion. So I think this has been seen as a bit of a victory for XRP in their battle against the SEC. Next, New York judge gives final approval for bankrupt FTX exchange to pay back $12.7 billion to FTX creditors. That is good for the creditors. Last few pieces of news more on the creative side. As we mentioned, Blast Token Pac Moon rebrands to Army and migrates to Solana. The price mooned on that news. It went up 65% to 11.2 million market cap. Athena actually expands USDE to Solana as well. Remember, Athena is like a synthetic dollar, kind of acts like a stable coin, but it is ultimately not a stable coin. So that's moving to Solana too, or expanding to Solana, sorry, not migrating. And finally, on the creative side, Zora integrates a Uniswap for on-chain NFT secondary markets. What they're going to do is, by pairing Zora and Uniswap, we are able to introduce a new era of creator royalties called secondary rewards. Every time a collector buys and sells on Uniswap, the creator will earn a percentage of that sale via the LP fees. These are on-chain and can't be removed. I recommend people looking into that. Now that kind of on-chain royalties for NFTs might be gone, this is like an interesting alternative as you kind of participate in the LP as the creator of a particular token. So that is the Web3 roundup from the snapshot. We have 10 minutes left, and I think we have to get in to the DeGods stuff in a bit more detail, because they managed to, the price has increased more than 100% in the last few days. I think it went as low as 0.4 ETH. Beforehand, it had been sitting in 0.6 to 0.7. And then it's now above 1.5. And I've got the series of tweets from Frank, which I think kind of gets into the spirit or into the essence of why there's been such momentum. So I'm going to share that with you now. I've got the tweets lined up here. Number one tweet coming from, actually, this was this morning. Floor is individual, market cap is communal. Whole industry will shift to this. This was a point that we've made a while ago, Sam, where I think I was speaking about how it's actually pretty crazy how we keep obsessing about the floor price when every single collection has a different number of NFTs. So clearly you can't compare a floor price with another collection because you don't have the same. The way to compare properly is by figuring out the market cap and talking about that. So Frank's point here, although it isn't about comparison, is just market cap is better, basically, is the sense of this tweet. And you can see how he went on to start tweeting in terms of market cap. And what is the other thing where we speak about market caps and more than anything else? Meme coins. So he started saying 50 million to 100 million is thin. Things happen fast. So talking about the NFT collection as if it is a coin with a market cap and talking about it going from 50 mil to 100 mil. Next tweet, he said, we're going to make a little game out of this. Here's what I'm going to do. I have 9 DeGods in this wallet. I will burn one at every interval leading up to 100 mil. 50, 55, 60, 65, 75, etc. all the way to 100. I just burned the first one. And then finally, I think this is the final one. Oh, no, that's something else. But look, I think that's the interesting switch in mindset here, Sam, where arguably I think it's just, well, on the one hand, I think it's a better mindset because obviously you should kind of be talking about market caps because that's how you can make better comparisons. But I don't know if this is to make better comparisons. This is more just to change the mindset of how you view the asset to make it more like more in line with meme coins. What are you thinking about that?
Yeah, it's definitely a smart way of changing the optics. And I think everyone in the trenches is using Telegram. So you can kind of see that shift where you kind of launch a Telegram channel, you've kind of switched it on the perspective on its head to start considering DeGods as like almost aligned, well, not aligned, but comparable to those memes. But I do think that you can't do that with every single collection. So I think what DeGods is doing is great for their particular community. And you got to remember that they were originally Solana, so they migrated various bridges. Now they're back on Sol, so that is like that has its own nuanced thing. And I think Frank is relatively deep in the trenches. Like I've seen him on the Thread Guy spaces that you've spoken about, and he's spoken about like deep with like meme coins with people like Mitch and a few others that are deep in those kind of market segments as well. So I think that's interesting, but I don't think it's going to work for all projects. And we spoke about Pepins yesterday, where you referenced the floor price, but actually because every single like new artist they bring on creates almost a tiered approach to floors within the project as a whole, it wouldn't necessarily work for that, because I don't think the market cap or the floor market cap of a Pepins is necessarily representative of the overall market cap of that particular project, because I think there's a lot of people are willing to pay significantly above floor for the likes of the pudgier Pepins, etc. So I think it just depends on the project. There will be other projects that are similar or businesses that are similar to DeGods that will be able to take this approach, but I don't think every single NFT project is going to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable take. What do you think about the kind of move to Telegram? Kind of like in the spirit of DeGods bridging, always looking for the next opportunity, sometimes being late to trends, but always in the spirit of like trying to do new things. There was this tweet by Rahim, who was on our show, and I think people really enjoyed his insights, not just on meme coins, but other stuff too. He said, DeGods trying new stuff is so amazing to see. Honestly, we should encourage experimenting so much more in this space. Everyone's afraid of being labeled a rug, and so people are hesitant to change the norms. I've never been in DeGods other than tiny quick flips, but rooting for everyone. What do you think, Sam, about just the ability to just keep pivoting and this specific pivot to kind of focus and hone in on Telegram?
Well, I'm actually trying to find to see if he's still got that pinned tweet where it's like we tried something. I can't remember what it was. It was something referencing they're basically, the underlying sentiment is they're not afraid to take risks. And I think that's been their motto the entire time, where they've bridged several times to different blockchains. But ultimately, is this a move into the Telegram narrative that's happening at the moment? Be interesting to see. But I think the Taipei stuff that's happening with the TON blockchain week, I'm intrigued to see what comes out of that, because both Mochaverse and DeGods doing some Telegram integration seems to be doing quite well. So,
yes. What would you say, like, to take the other side of this, just to provide some context, kind of spoken about why it's a good thing. On some level, it makes sense because that's probably the better way to compare NFT collections anyway. On some level, it makes sense because, look, attention is on meme coin, so maybe speaking about it is more helpful. But isn't there just the danger here of anything, right? Like when you're talking about NFT floor price and founders saying, well, this is going to go from 1 to 2, the floor is then, like, project founders would get criticism for that because you're focusing on the price. Isn't this just a different version of the same thing? Like, this could end, well, all things that are pumping stuff aggressively tend to end not very well. Can you see that happening as well again here?
Yeah, I mean, it would be a case of, I mean, once the dust settles and people have kind of like got into the Telegram channel, like they need something else in the pipeline to sustain that attention. And that will be something that I'll be keeping an eye out for. Like I personally wouldn't buy in now after the floor price is pumped, because I don't know, like to move the market cap to those higher levels from now is going to take more capital than it did from like the lower levels. So it becomes harder. So that's not a sustainable way of growing that particular project. But yeah, keen to see what Frank does next. He's always not been afraid to take risks. So like Raheem said, like I think that should be what we take away from this, and what founders should be doing and looking at. Like, okay, well, what risk can I take to try and captivate the community?
Yeah, I wonder whether, like, in the end, I remember having this question once where I think Frank was actually with us on the show, asking us, you guys are in NFTs, you've been here ages. Like, what is it that you're looking for? What would actually make you, what would make you buy something at the moment? And I think at the time, the latest buy that we had done was Blasting Pepe's, which was this interesting thing where basically your downside was capped for a new mint because they've got the liquidity pool and you can buy a particular price and then you can always get your money back from the amount that's in the liquidity pool. But I've wondered out loud before whether every NFT collection just trends towards this search for alpha. Like, if you're going to create a chat, what are the things that can unite people across borders, across time, across different backgrounds? It's just like, can you provide me with information that can make me more money? And I don't know if we've managed to like go above that. I think certain IP stuff maybe has done that. And when maybe from a business perspective, I know Legendary spoke about joining the Pudgy Penguins and saying like, this is like legit open some doors. Like, it's legit open some doors. It's not about pumping anyone's bags. It just helped to be able to have certain conversations. And I thought that was pretty cool. Like, do you think it's inevitable that it's just they all trend towards the search for alpha? Or do you think there is potential for more?
Well, I think there is that. It's always kind of come around to that full circle. With, you look at, was it 2021 when you had all the alpha groups, like you had the token passes, and that kind of faded because every man and his dog had like an alpha pass, so it didn't become alpha. So I think like there is that, and I think that is a form of providing value to your community. Like I use Wassies as an example. Like it's probably the first time where I've bought an NFT and the founders reached out to me in my DMs and be like, hey, like we've got this token gated Telegram channel, download Matrica, and then just go through the steps and you'll be able to get in. And then it's actually really active. So I was surprised by that. And I think that there is something to Telegram. It's simplicity, it's easy to use, like it's just an app on your phone. Whereas I find Discord nowadays, like you go into a Discord channel and there's about 20 different channels and you look for general, but then people aren't always in there. They're in there around the mint time. And then like a month after mint, it's just like deserted. Like there's no one in there. There's no activity. But I think Telegram seems to be able to sustain that a little bit more. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just like a lower barrier to entry. I don't know if it's just like an easier thing to use, like it's faster. But yeah, it just seems to be the medium of choice. And I think in Europe, you've got Telegram, you've got WhatsApp, and people use that outside of crypto. So maybe that is that. And I think Discord, people natively use that for gaming. So I think that's probably why it took off in 2021. But I think Telegram seems to be a more widely used alternative to Discord.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. If people are uncertain about that, it's definitely been the case at almost every crypto conference that I go to now. In fact, even instead of wanting to connect on Twitter, people would rather just go straight to Telegram, which is pretty meaningful, I think. Look, that is the end of today's show. Hope that was interesting. As always, covered a variety of important points from the last day. Remember, we'll do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. BST. We're live on X. We're live on YouTube. We are also available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you prefer to consume your content there. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much to my legendary co-host, Sammy. And we'll be back tomorrow. Have a good day. Bye-bye.